Becoming too comfortable or complacent is not a good thing in any aspect of your life, whether it's your location, your job, your relationships, or something else. Make a commitment to keep things fresh and challenge yourself to get out of your comfort zone and try new things. Hello again. Welcome to The Ruthless Truth. I am your host, Truth Davis. In this forum, I'll share opinions, thoughts, truths on a wide variety of topics based on what I believe to be a unique life experience. And you can read more about that in the notes or the bio. But just know I'm an inner city kid who ascended to the C-suite of a Fortune 100 company. So I've seen some things. My intent is to share stories, hopefully provide some life or career lessons that can aid you in your journey. And please follow me on TruthDavis5 on Instagram. General format, I'll share some thoughts on recent things in the news, and then I'll go into a deeper discussion on today's truth. And then I like to finish with a fun American history fact. Okay, a recent hot topic has been the recent cancellation of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. And some people are, I guess, outraged because they feel that CBS, Paramount caved to pressure from the White House and that they sold out just to get their pending merger approved by the Department of Justice. Okay. I mean, I have no insight or inside information on this situation, but the popular opinion is probably true. And I actually like Stephen Colbert. I was a fan of Stephen Colbert, long before his popularity soared. But I would remind Stephen of a couple of points that he may have seemingly forgotten. One, this is a business. And two, you are an employee. Choices have consequences. By choosing to consistently make fun of one political party, well, you just acknowledge you have alienated half of the country and reduce your potential audience. Second, this merger is worth billions to your employer. I'm sure CBS did some quick math and said, if the only thing that's keeping us from closing this multi-billion-dollar deal is one contentious host that is losing money, well, that's an easy call to make. And that call gets even easier when said host continues to lambaste an employer on national television every night. Again, the most important thing in business is money. That said, I do find it somewhat distasteful when business decisions are made for non-business reasons, like bruised egos. But it happens. When I was at Verizon Wireless, The Tonight Show was hosted by Jay Leno. And there was about a 2-week stretch where Jay Leno was making comments about the wireless category in general and Verizon by name. And it really bothered my CEO. And so he calls me up. Hey, how much money do we spend on NBC? I'm like, probably close to $100 million. We are the number one single brand advertiser on NBC. Well, he says, I don't think it's right that we spend all this money with them and then they turn around and ridicule us. And I tried to explain, well, these are two different divisions of NBC. The people who manage the advertising have nothing to do with the content creation from the entertainment division. He's like, I don't care. Call them and tell them to tell Jay Leno to stop making fun of us. I'm like, really? Are you serious? Because all I was thinking about is how embarrassing it would be to have to make that call. But he was adamant. Call him and make him stop. So I made the call, leveraged my weight, and sure enough, not only did Jay Leno stop making fun of us, but in the next week, he actually praised Verizon in a couple of monologues. Money. it still makes the world go round. Okay, let's get to today's truth. So, how are you feeling about your life right now? How's your state of being? Are you happy, sad, frustrated, or are you satisfied, content, comfortable? You know, it's okay to be comfortable, but just don't get too comfortable. Getting too comfortable in your life situation, whether it be your job, your relationships, or any other aspect of life, can put you in a rut. And a rut is where joy goes to die. So in today's truth, I want to talk about the importance of not getting too comfortable. You know, one of the most powerful forces in nature is inertia. In physics, it means an object continues in its existing state of rest or uniform motion in a straight line, unless that state is changed by some external force. In life, it means a tendency to do nothing or to remain unchanged. Well, how uninspiring is that? How happy can you be in a rut doing the same thing every day, all the time? So what changes can you make to improve your situation? Well, let's first acknowledge change is hard. It can also be scary and stressful. And these are reasons that most people hate and avoid change. But today I want to emphasize the potentially positive and rewarding benefits of making life changes. Specifically, I want to discuss three major areas of potential change: location, career, and relationships. Now, it's quite possible that the first two, location and job, are related, even codependent. A leading reason that people move is job related, whether it's starting a new job or relocating within the existing company. But for the purpose of this discussion, let's first talk about reasons for moving independent of job satisfaction. You know, as adults, we go through a predictable series of life stages. There's 4 of them. And these are early adulthood, which is 20s to early 30s. You're most likely single. The second one is family and career building years. These are the mid 30s to 40s. This is when people start getting married, start a family, and it's also a time for significant income growth. You know, these are the money making years. The third one is pre-retirement, which is your 40s and 50s. And then the last stage is retirement, which is 60s and beyond. Of these, I think the toughest transition is from early adulthood to the family and career building years. You know, I've long held that the fastest 5 years is from age 27 to 32. At 27, you're still in your 20s, enjoying hanging out with your friends, going to happy hour, traveling. But then at 32, you look up and say, damn, I'm almost in my mid 30s. And if you're still single, you see that window starting to close for getting married and or having children. So a question to ask yourself: does your current city match your life stage? Because depending on your life stage, are some cities better than others? Well, the answer is probably. You know, Atlanta and Manhattan are great cities to be young and single. There are multitudes of people in their 20s, and there's always something to do. And you don't know or care about the school system options because it has nothing to do with you. But does it still work for you after getting married, starting a family? And if you're starting to focus on wealth building, how does the affordability of your current location help or hurt? Affordability is driving a great migration out of high cost of living cities, most prominently in California. The combination of high housing costs and state income taxes make it difficult to build wealth. So where are these Californians moving to? Texas, Arizona, Nevada, Washington, Tennessee, Florida. And not only are these states far more affordable, but 3 of them don't even have state income tax. Now, I know it's tough to leave a city you enjoy, but you have to prioritize. If you're serious about building wealth, a change of locale may greatly accelerate your plan. And hey, you can always visit. Also, how important is weather to your quality of life? For many people who live in northern climates, over time, those cold, harsh winters start to get old. When I lived in Arizona, I met more native Iowans in my first 6 months there than I had met previously in my entire life. They wanted nicer weather and a compatible environment. Maybe you and your current city are not culturally compatible. Are you a hardcore conservative living in Austin, Texas? Or perhaps you're a bleeding heart liberal and find yourself in Nashville. For some people, living as such a political minority is a source of dissatisfaction, and they may seek to live around more people with similar values. So given all this, you'd think that people are on the move all the time in a quest to improve their situation. Nope. Inertia. I've said it before. I don't understand people who constantly complain about things they can't change, like weather and traffic, but will accept things they can change, like a bad job, a bad relationship, or a bad location. But the fact is, most people don't move. And when they do move, they don't move far. 40% of U.S. adults have never moved away from their hometown. And then when you look at the universe of people who do move, 50% of them move within the same county, and then another 25% move within the same state. So only 25% of movers relocate to a different state. And what are the top reasons for moving? Well, until very recently, the number one answer was job related. But with more remote opportunities, fewer people are required to move for a new job. So the number one reason now is to be closer to family. But whatever the reason, every few years, you should ask yourself, is this location still working for me? And for whatever the reason, consider the pros and cons of making a change. Now, as I mentioned, people often move because of career opportunities, and that definitely applies to me. I've been a resident of 8 different states. I've lived in California, Arizona, Tennessee, Ohio, Georgia, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. And Georgia includes Atlanta 5 different times. So obviously my wife and I moved a lot. I probably wouldn't recommend that people change locations as often as we did, because when my oldest son started 4th grade, he was at his 4th elementary school in 5 years. And that can be tough on a kid. Fortunately, he was okay, because otherwise I would have been racked with guilt. But initially, moving didn't come easily to me. It took a while for me to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Now, of course, the first move was the biggest one because it got me out of my comfort zone. We were living in Atlanta and our sons were aged 5 and 3. And one night at dinner, I mentioned I had received a message from a headhunter about a new job. And my wife said, well, how did it sound? I said, it doesn't matter. The job's in California and we're not moving to California. So you're not going to call them back and learn more about the position? No, because it's in California. And at that point, I'd only been to California once, which was LA. This job was in the Bay Area. But how do you know this wouldn't be great for you? It doesn't matter. We're not moving to California. And she's like, well, you should at least call it back. So just to placate her, I returned the call. And as it turned out, this was a great opportunity. I got the job at GT Wireless, which later became part of Verizon, and we moved to the Bay Area. It was good for us financially and broadened the horizon for us and the kids. Plus, it put me on the career growth path for Verizon Wireless. From there, I moved 2 more times with Verizon, with the last location being in Baskin Ridge, New Jersey. And that was an interesting situation. As I mentioned earlier, my oldest son started 4th grade at his 4th elementary school. And it was that same month that Verizon wanted me to take the role of VP of Brand Management and Advertising at headquarters in New Jersey. Great opportunity. But I told them I just couldn't move my family again. I mean, at some point we need to be in a community long enough to make friends, have some stability. So I turned the job down 2 times. But my potential new boss was relentless and persuasive. So I accepted the position, but I kept my commitment to not move the family. So for the next 3 years, I commuted from Atlanta to Newark every week. I caught a 6 a.m. flight every Monday morning from Atlanta to Newark, and then returned on a 3 p.m. flight every Friday afternoon. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone, but when I was hired as the chief marketing officer for Comcast, the family and I fully relocated to Philadelphia. And this was great for us for a couple of reasons. First, this was by far the highest profile and most lucrative position of my career. And as importantly, we weren't exactly happy with our current school in Atlanta, and the move to Philly provided the opportunity for our sons to attend a Quaker school, which was a phenomenal educational experience that I cannot fairly express in words. We committed to our sons that we would remain in Philly until they finished middle school and high school. One final reason for moving is money. Generally, people only choose to move to another location if they're going to experience a significant increase in pay, often more than 15%, as opposed to the merit increases that are going to be 2 to 5%. So even if you don't change location, changing jobs can often accelerate your salary growth. The last area of change I want to discuss is relationships. Now, to be clear, I'm not advocating for changing to a new partner or spouse. It's hard enough to find a person you click with. So if you are fortunate enough to have found that person in your life, by all means, stay with it. But that doesn't mean you stop working at it. Stop improving. Stop expanding. I get that there's a certain amount of routine to life when you're married and or if you have kids. I mean, schedules are a requirement. But just don't lose your sense of adventure. One of the side benefits of moving is it automatically opens a new chapter, experiencing a new city and environment. So, in relationships, I want to talk about 2 areas of change. First, making changes within your existing relationship. And then the second one, making a relationship change, which basically I'm saying breaking up and moving on. Let's take the last one first. If your relationship is irretrievably broken, you probably already know it. You may not want to face the reality right now because you're terrified about what's next. But in case you don't know, here are a few signs that it's probably over and you need to move on. Number 1, contempt. This happens when you're trying to communicate and there's nothing but disgust and eye rolling and dismissiveness. The second one is a loss of empathy and understanding. You know, one of the best aspects of a positive relationship is having someone to talk to when you're dealing with external problems or stressors. But if your partner is consistently resistant to listening, helping, or worst of all, caring, that's a big problem. Another area, lack of meaningful conversation. You know, we don't talk about anything anymore. Another clue, if there's negativity and criticism. If the most common dynamic in your communication is complaining and criticizing your partner, you may be near the end. And then lack of intimacy, affection, attraction, excitement about spending time together. I had one friend who said he knew it was over when he consistently cringed at the sound of the garage door opening because that meant his wife had arrived home. Look, breaking up is hard to do. The thought of being alone is scary, especially if it's been a long time since you were single. But if it's bad and truly over, eventually you will reach a breaking point, and all that time you stayed after realizing it was just wasted time. Okay, the second category, making changes within the relationship. You know, this could actually be a reason for optimism, because here's some signs that maybe you've gotten a little too comfortable. you physically let yourself go. Lack of exercise, bad diet, alcohol have led to significant weight gain. Your partner can only see that is you don't care about them or you don't care about yourself. Don't stop trying to impress. This may also manifest itself in your wardrobe choices where you wear the same few outfits all the time. Another one is you never try or do anything new. This is the pure definition of rut. Rediscover fun things to do. Accept invitations to events, especially if it means you're going to meet new people. Take up a hobby together, like golf or tennis or cooking. My wife and I enjoy doing kids things like putt-putt and going to the beach. Doesn't take a lot of money, just time and desire. Another sign you've gotten a little comfortable is that your conversation has degraded to updates. Here's what I did today. What did you do today? That's not conversation. That's checking in, almost like a status meeting at work. Come on, expand your topics. Ask each other's opinions on current events, or just share thoughts and ideas that have been on your mind. Another area of conflict is you spend a lot of time apart. Now, don't get me wrong. I strongly believe a healthy amount of separation is great for a relationship. You don't have to do everything together. You should each maintain your own identity, but you need to strike a balance. One of the advantages of improved financial condition is you can probably afford a larger house. The downside is it's easier for you to spend time separated, even when you're both at home. So don't get so comfortable spending time apart that you've lost the excitement of spending time together. My wife and I both love live music. So every year we check to see which of our favorite artists are touring. Then we buy the concert tickets for another city. So this gives us a reason to travel and have a greater experience than just going to the show and then coming back home. Finally, the biggest risk in getting too comfortable is your partner may begin to feel you just don't care anymore about them or about yourself, and definitely about the relationship. This could start you down the slippery path toward the other type of relationship we just discussed. So, to close, for the most part, becoming too comfortable or complacent is not a good thing in any aspect of your life, whether it's your location, your job, your relationships, or something else. Make a commitment to keep things fresh and challenge yourself to get out of your comfort zone and try new things. Life is about experiences. Continuing to resist complacency and keep living is the best path to joy. Your dreams should be greater than your memories. Okay, let's get to the American history fun fact. Okay, the American history fun fact. I want to tell you about a brilliant inventor and exceptional American named Chester Carlson. Chester was born in 1906 in Seattle, Washington. As a young child, his parents suffered from illnesses. His father had tuberculosis, his mother had malaria. So from an early age, Chester worked to support the family. And because of his work schedule, he had to occasionally take breaks from school. But he managed to eventually finish high school and later put himself through Caltech. From the time he was a child, he knew he wanted to be an inventor. He had read about Thomas Edison and other successful inventors and believed this to be his life calling. In 1933, Chester was 27 years old, and both of his parents were deceased at that point. That year, he was fired from his job at Bell Labs for participating in an outside business venture. But he knew entrepreneurship was for him. In 1936, he began attending law school at night. And because he couldn't afford to buy the law books, he would copy the information by hand. Well, the pain he suffered strengthened his resolve to invent a duplicating machine for documents. During and after law school graduation, he began experimenting with duplication techniques in his kitchen, using various chemical combinations. And based on his experience as a patent attorney, he was sure to patent every improvement and achievement along the way. So using electrophotography, Chester developed a way to make true duplicates of documents, which was a significant improvement over the standard method of the day, which was photostat. But photostat could only produce a negative of the image. Chester named his process xerography. So, Chester Carlson obtained the first of many for the xerographic process and tried unsuccessfully to interest someone in developing and marketing his invention. More than 20 companies turned him down. Finally, in 1944, he persuaded Battelle Memorial Institute of Ohio, a nonprofit organization, to undertake development of his work. And then in 1947, a small firm in New York, the Haloid Company, obtained the commercial rights to xerography. They were so bullish on Chester's process that they changed the name of the company to Xerox, and in 1947 introduced the first office copier. Now, Chester continued to work at Xerox as a consultant until 1956, and he continued to receive royalties from all his patents, and at one point was earning 1/16 of a cent for every paper copy made in the world. Well, as such, Chester accumulated massive wealth, and in 1968, Forbes ranked him as one of the richest people in America. But Chester sent a brief note to Forbes informing them they had overestimated his wealth by about $150 million. And it's like, how could Forbes be so far off? Well, because unbeknownst to just about everyone, Carlson had spent years quietly giving his money away. He had donated over $150 million to charitable organizations and was an active and generous supporter of the NAACP. He also gave generously to the New York Civil Liberties Union and the University of Virginia. And because of his wife's interest in Hinduism, he supported various initiatives, including providing funding for the Rochester Zen Institute. He's in the National Inventors Hall of Fame. He's had numerous buildings named after him, and New York City codenamed 37th Street in Queens after Chester Carlson. This was the site of his first makeshift lab. He even had a U.S. postage stamp. So, Chester Carlson, great inventor, shrewd businessman, generous philanthropist, great American. That's all I have today for The Ruthless Truth. Thank you so much for listening. Please engage on social media. Go to Instagram, TruthDavis5, and follow. You can also go to the YouTube channel, Truth Davis, and also the website, truthdavis.com. Thank you, and I'll talk to you next time.